Okay, so sorry for I was having some technical difficulties this morning, getting my Zoom going. So very nice to see all of you. And you can hear me? Nicole, you can hear me? Okay. Testable to all of those in India. And we have a really exciting schedule for this morning's session. What I'd like to do is introduce the idea of different types of research and with a particular focus on qualitative versus quantitative research. And then we're very excited to have Dr. Jenny Mascaro speak with us today about some of her research on qualitative versus quantitative methods, and those terms will become more familiar to you. Dawa, I realize we're translating, so go ahead.
Today, Shobagan and Zundate pay up on your service. The Tirin by Nangazo Sotadi Caps, Soothing also Shimjiganla, Pizza Shinji Sage down, Borsa Shinji Sage, or Data Bocola, any Chingotus Chigians, the Nangatis, Topper the Dandagate, Sontadi Caps, and also the Carsa. Again, Jenny La Pede, Resige Jenny like any Shimjitan David, Tantanda. Jenny,
do you want to just say a little bit of kind of introduce yourself for a second?
Sure. It's really nice to be here. My name is Jenny Mascaro. I'm a biological anthropologist, and I work in the Department of Family and Preventive Medicine at Emory, where I study different mind-body approaches to wellness, including different meditation practices and yoga and other factors, behaviors that we think help well-being.
Again, Jenny, the challenge the Emery challenge, and that's so thing as to Karsugde, Nasu Migi, Shichu, Las Opagantele, Simjinangadwa, and it was soothing as which Gomta, any Shichu Tentan taking us to put a Talaganas Pangres, Telaya, Simjinangis.
And it's just a real privilege for us to have Jenny. And I just want to say thank you, Jenny, for joining us today.
Again, Jenny, let this paper go to Jones. This time, let the paper
My pleasure. It's really nice to be here.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is just start out with a definition of the idea of research, and we talked about this yesterday.
But
kind of more technically, a research is a method of finding out what you want to know using the scientific method.
Simjig said, that second grade Osheba in Bana Susu Kari, Shinny Trujutelaya, and a Tsering Tablan Picture on the Lens Where Delaya, Nation Disagrees.
And we'll talk later about what the scientific method means and what terms like theory and hypothesis and variable mean.
That Jelayang Atsugi Tsering Tablan Sage or take it 20 Karim, but Digan Layang also. But
like Buddhism, research is a very systematic way of investigating reality. But an important point is that there are diverse research methods. So even though research is a method of investigating reality, there's many different ways of conducting research. And two major distinctions in research are the difference between what's called qualitative research and quantitative research. So qualitative research is the first topic that I'll introduce you to.
다 당보들 비제 신직 사이에 당보된 것들 지야기 아니 신직게 이어대인스.
And the critical component of qualitative research is that it involves collecting and analyzing non-numerical data.
단다 비제 신직 값이 임바나 거기 가서 그래다 농동계 지시대 가서게 지 장가 많이 받지 그럼 벌써 많이 받기 아니 지장투 들으지야들이스.
And the goal of qualitative research is to really understand the concepts, the opinions, and the experiences of the people you're studying.
다 주대 비제 신직 거기 무기인도 가르레스는 미세대 내처럼 그 특습 신직 제사기 메대기 지금 냠냠당 아니 그거 다츠당 지금 놓칠라 소파티다 강라야 내지 줄은지야들이스.
So the point that's important here is that you're not getting numerical data on people, but you're really understanding their stories and their experiences.
단단히 값은 이거에 가르쳐서는 실수라야 미대도 데비가 장토되는 라고요 말이스. 누메릭 그 버셋던 데비가 장토되는 라고요 말이스. 이메이나야 고속에 냠냠당 지금 던 데비가 미치던 데비가 루지스고라다 되는 라고요레스.
So qualitative research is often a very personalized way of getting information about a person or a group of people. It's really understanding their personal experience.
That's the position you can say Musata she Shasatikala me girl like she shabby Simjila rally special shapan me girl and na me girl Mambo tripping Topachika Kuzoge Yamyon Laya and Kuto Sag the depiction within the rest.
So the reason I have a notebook here is that typically the data you collect in qualitative research are more stories and descriptions than it is actual numbers.
That under de la tambo de la detect the young Jinsenti Caresana Chorangi Tanda get a position because the Richiage Chitantuchi or a Derati Caresana ne Casugre. Me take cook drawn down, meet it on David drawn down, the Pajotela and decision you run, decision you get Titranza and Dela and the 10 years.
Now, there's different ways that you can do qualitative research. So, can you see my cursor move, Dawa?
Yes.
So in this situation, you can see that the researcher is more passively watching the group of people that she's observing. So the researcher is watching, in this case, the classroom in what's referred to as its natural or naturalistic environment.
The researchers are the two ladies or the one in the...
I'm sorry, yeah. The researcher is the person here and she's watching the classroom. So this is the researcher and this is just the natural classroom. So you can see the researcher here is really trying to not participate, not engage in, or not involved in the situation, just to simply watch it. And she, in this situation, is taking notes on a notepad to write down her impressions of the classroom that she's watching.
주데 아니 무라야 단 전전디 값스 단 용화도 가리치 종마 종티 아니 그게 너거는 제대로도 뭐는 제대로가 틀리 지요레스.
Another way that you can do qualitative research is to actually ask the people questions that you want to know about them.
다 현대 비즈니스 신주 지역의 답은 현대 지가리오레 시스템 발라에 저런 게 특시 신주 지색 미대달라 저런 게 학군이 주역이 아니 저한테 파당해 지거와 어떤 스탠다드 거레스.
So here this person is the researcher and these are the participants or the people that she's interviewing to get more information.
단단하게 버리스 받이나 답이나 세조사나 그 법무디가 이소사가 법무디가라는 신주 받듯이 파조디가라는 뭐게다 다시 진이 주살 뭐게 좋아당사게 아니 그 다시들라 연주시 진이레스.
And she may be asking them very specific questions, or she may be asking them very open-ended questions that just allow them to kind of answer however they want to.
다 디캅신 바네 뭐게 지치나야 지정 니젠데나로 정 니젠데나 당고요시그레 지치바인 바이나 양고 open-ended system을 좋아 지금 가서그 삼스주의 좋아한다고 당대당 아니 그게 종대다 수수게 단 주식진이 되게 수수가 가린 도파나진데 시작 중으로 좋아되다 당스게 요시그레스.
Whatever the nature of the questions, the goal is to just better understand their experience.
다 좋아 당에게 좋아 되게 뭐 간단하고 지금 바이나 양다 그게 쭉 좋아때 당위가 무기대가래서는 그 속에 지금 냠용띠 아니 지금 고토래야기 지드레스.
But the important point is that if it's qualitative research, she's not gathering numerical data that will be used in some statistical analysis, but simply just trying to kind of narrate the quality of their experience.
난데 값을 응이과지 가래서 스tambal아야 비즈니스 값을 뭐게 바이나 지금 가서 그래. 다 속에 지금 벌써 등가된다 배추당대 아니 그 아니 담았들랑아서 다슬라트네 됐던 지금 다쇼지야 지금 디나도게 아니 답시때 지금요 말이스 주디가레스 스tambal아야 다 주식진유 고속의 냠용띠만 그런 대주지야기 제도로와 무기대디 아니 심직디 좋아대 당겨레스.
So if somebody's new to the research world, they may say, this is kind of strange. I didn't think about research as being this kind of non-directive qualitative assessment.
다 지금 심직글람라야 토마신이 지금 바나 비즈니스 신기사야데 캔서 지레샤스 연고 태커야 마임바 좋아들어도 당치데데 고 비즈니스랑라타데 당야 고 심직인데 로지체 에어나 사메데나로 삼스그레스.
But this is a very important part of research. Qualitative research is a very important part of the research endeavor.
지금시는 바이나 아주 지금 그 심지그 람란루니 바이나 아니 비슷한 심지그 사야데 양코가 접차 하진 게 전부 지차기 그랬어.
So my question for you, and anyone can speak up and answer this question, is what do you think the goals are of qualitative research? Why do this type of research of just asking open-ended questions or just simply observing a situation?
다 제출라야 트러스트 당인스 트라데 제출란 간다춘의 디그두스와 데 트라데 카린스 스tambal에 아주 비즈니스 유사이치고라 비즈니스 유사이데게 미기 당 지금 디카린스레스 골드 카린스레스와 데 값이 바나 산사말에 미치기 진짜 젠다치기 지위 값을 데라야 니치 답시 지와 잠라텐데 당아수 신지지가와 젠다인 바나야 트라데 오픈-엔디드 시스템 발랑아 주기 지 삼츠 송야도 트라데 치고라 트라데 묵세 마임바 무츠 가라 마임바 트라데라 렌치 징부촌에 주기 트라데나도 지 당치 지기 요레스타 디나도 값을 비세 신지사야 디 드리피기 무기디 카린스레스.
And anyone can step up, just kind of pick up a mic and answer if they have a thought on this.
Delaya Layo Baina, the Capriti Pechetang de Teva, and it's on Rochis Lane.
Hello.
Just delay.
Hi, Shoyan.
Good evening, Robin, and all the professor and translator and all my friends here. So I think the goal of the qualitative research is to understand the topic, what we want to know, and also especially like for emotion, right? If we want to research on like emotion such like anger, I think it's really hard to research like quantitative research. So I think better to choose the qualitative research and then to understand how it affects on our behavior and sleep and also like for our physical health. So the reason, or like the purpose is to better understand that how anger how anger affect on our behavior, right?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Shoyan.
Tada ane chyo lagi soya de der shenga su ju shikari jangni chu ye ba de ha ko ya che tres lapar to nga su ge ane chi samyong ko kor yo ro samyong ko kor yin ba na samyong na ne lapar to ane chi control la su pa den de ti ane nga su ge chi shichola ya shuchen categories de la ten de nga su ge nila ya shuchen categories thotan la shuchen categories de ta yin ba na nga su ge chi yang borche ge simji la ten de len rawa den ma resistance tambala ya di kaps pitse shinjing de la ten de nga su ge chi ge control la ten de nga su ge cholam ta theten ta chi ga ni la su pala shuchen category du se de la ya se ji la ya ne ha jeng ge ya go du sa go du stins tambala mi de ten no chin seres.
Does anyone else have any ideas of what the goals are of qualitative research to add to what Shoyan said?
Tada ane chyo lagi songwa de gang la ya ane kanun jani de US.
Hello.
Hello.
My understanding of this qualitative research, the goal of qualitative research is to understand the experience of human and people and their way of living and their culture and the mental disposition of different kinds of people.
Wonderful.
Tada di gelagi sombay na da nga so ge chi pse shinji sa de mi ko la ya kutlan do hapar ta ani chi nyamnyong re ko ge rjong re tani samlu gi tawan jintang la so pa chi warwa otita ani chi hakku ya chi tres.
Anyone else?
Agenda yos.
I think you're muted.
Hello.
Oh,
hello.
Yes.
Okay, I think qualitative research, maybe in one way we can look something like when we assess, societal structure and norms of different tradition and its impact on people's behavior and their growth and their personality and all these things.
Tanda again so there was so the so chitsuka tripton chigoro chitsuka tripton la tende de ton tina na yopi gi mi gi ani chi tsuwa ta shishe ton la su pala shuchin ka tek du se chigoro te gala shinji chetres.
Those are all wonderful answers. And so my next question is, what do you think both the strengths and the weaknesses are? And I just want to emphasize that qualitative research involves collecting no numerical data. It's just the stories of the people, or it's just passively watching the situation that you want to learn more about.
Tanda de ka se ban nga so ge pse shinji se be kapse tanda chi chu ge lan chom ba de ka se pe ya ko shin song sro tanda ko ga mi ka ri bi ko la ya nga su ge yang pse shinji se de ka la yang che samli tam ba ina de kapse ban nga su ge 아니 지 장가 당도 지 장투 수고라 단 버체 당도 지 장투 인데 들이 지 요 말이스 나츠 가리 지가 하 군이 쪼아텔라야 야만에 지금 지 마치 우가니 톡세 지고 야만에 쪼아치 당도 테라로 지 두고 요레스 틴스탐발라야 다다 디나도 피체 순직데라야 코랑라야 아니 기펜가리치도 야 콜라야 존차가리치도.
So with that understanding, what do you think might be some strengths and also what might be some weaknesses of this approach?
다다 강라 sombi tetala tene baina ani tanda ge chi ya piche sijig de la ya ni chu ginsen ta choncha kara kare dos.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think the strength of this qualitative research is that when we observe and not engage into this classroom, for example, like second picture, so you can understand their own behavior with your own experience. Otherwise, if you involve in that, then in the classroom, they will pretend to be, some fake, and they are not doing the normal classroom. So if you observe in the backside, then you can understand the true nature of the classroom if you want to know that one. And the weakness is that one for the, when we survey and question in the third picture, so the weakness is that when you ask specific questions, they have more chances to be telling lies. If they don't want to share you, and if you ask specific questions, they will might be telling lies. So this is might be the one of weakness. Thank you.
Gelage tatse bana chi kurangi tachi ginsende karre system balaye ketinga so pranyo telata ba imbaina kunjushu machi we gangni ani dus ko tachi tapshido che ba imbaina ani mi kutsu ko tachi mi ge ta ko tashi pinji chi sa gan jushu chi ko sola ya ani tashi shinji chi ni de ge shuchen te ma re san sama nga so ge na te jushu che ba imbaina yang jushu chi wala te ne ta mi kutsu shi cholan jurata ya ta ya namjin zenta so yo pa ti ngo la mando ni ton tin jongor wa tin stam bala ya kutsu ge ani tela ya tashi shinji pa ti ge shi che ma te ya de ya de la karsena ko ge karso bre da ko arangsungu khoi chila ni ton tela kutsu namjin charchin kari chi ge yo pa ti jiwa tela to shi chi ge yo chon te ko ginse chi la tong dos ni shende te ba na rumo karso bre da rumo sumbatsukura to per thama tela ta ba imbana de kapsung aso twa tang stambala ya twa tang stambala de dus twa tang ba imbana sam samla yang aso go jun she ge ne tan te on gres tin stambala yang te kurunge jun she ge ne tan te chong ba imbana aso shin bi te ge na tele ko go penya to mara tin stambala yang ko ti chun cha chi la tong dos.
Wonderful. Anyone else have ideas of the strengths or weaknesses of not collecting any data and more qualitative research?
다다 데 kapsin bana yang ko ge ginsen ta chen tin da ko la sonye shen da yos.
Hello.
Yeah.
I think I can just add some, although it's more or less same what Colin just said, but most specifically, I think the advantage could be that you get to have the first-hand information about the person or the subject that you are observing through their own narration. And the disadvantage that I think is that there are lots of possibilities that you cannot control. There will be different conditions that you won't be able to have control on. So you won't be able to predict the cause and effect directly. So you can just say that there's a correlation, but you cannot directly come to the causal effect of that observation.
Tata gela so adirwa dodo re shasti ka khanu chi jagin stampo de la ya ko ginsen de kare re system bala nga so mi tampu ge ta korung ge nyongati ko so de shajang stambala ya ko so ge nitse te tala nga so mi ge ta shaja kro nyont kyo re stambala ya ko first hand information ra ge orwa ko so gan shaja la nga so nitse de ra ge yo ko ge ginsen chi re shasnyo ta ko chon do kare stambal de kap sang so ge tangze ru kha ta de ro ge ne tante yont kyo marati ayong makris stambala ya nga so ge chi ju kare sha de la tane jibu kare chong sha sa chi orwa te ta la nga so ge yang ko chopo che khabu chi gres de kap sim bana nga so ge correlation system bala tinde cham sha ma topi monitor in dela tene de chon sha sa ti tala ya chopa che khabu chi gres system bala ti ku question ro tumudus.
So those are wonderful summaries of the strengths and weaknesses, and I think just to highlight, the strength is really that you get to see the people that you're studying in their natural environment, and a weakness is that it's hard to establish causation because you're not really manipulating the situation to determine whether or not there's kind of a causal effect. Yeah.
Dada de shitsu de pe yago song standard di kurang ginsen tension cha kola ya ne dada de ko jiyan ton dio do se bai bai na ko ginsen de kare sina ko so ge ji garan shung ko khori chi le ne tan kan da yim ba te nga su ko to la ya ne chi le lo yo pa te kurang ge ginsen chi res ne shen ta ko chen do kare se stam bala ya nga su ge jundi ge ji dewa chi goro te sha kha bu chi res ni stam bala ya de la ten de chong sha se ge te zo yang ga su ge chok pa che te
So another main difference in research, or a main category, is what's called quantitative research. So quantitative research involves actually collecting and analyzing numerical data on the people that you're studying.
Tanda de kapsa nga su shinji ka thaben shenda chi kares na borse shinji tires borse shinji te kapsa kar chugula na tangka tande wi tang tu segura tangka tande wi tang tu ti ani druchi de ta tela ya nga su ge ani shinji chi ga yishi chi ga res.
So here you're getting actual data and you're trying to quantify numerically aspects about the people that you're studying, to rank them or to better understand their scores on particular measures.
Ta tanda de kapsa imbane chi kar chi res stambla shinji de la tan de tan chora la ya tanga ra go res ta tanga tan de angi ra go res angi de ra la tan de de ni chora ga kar chi na de res stambla angi de to pecho tang de tan ro ni ko su ge chora ga ha ku ni tu ni ge chwa de ta ga la ro ko su ge ni chi gurum de ga chi go ro chi pang de ga chi go ra ta ya shu ni tu shi lo tu shi na ma shi ro de ga ro ta ni ko su la ya ni score stambla de kapsa nga su ge tanga ja sha test na de do ya ko ge now
this could be kind of passive quantitative data where, say, you're just observing a group and simply counting the number of times that they do a behavior or something like that.
Yang asu tangre ke tangtu ti dia tenda yore speech sha pa imbaina chi chloni dus milaya tapsiti chi de te kutsu ge ani chi chopati thamaka chu chi tengi du sa chi gorwa oti ge tangka ti dur chi tenda yongres.
Or it could be more active where you actually create a questionnaire that asks a specific set of questions that you want to learn about a person.
De shenda chi kar stambala nga chu ge active se gorwa ta nga sun du shi chiu ga na imbaina ko ge chorong ge taksi chi sa ge ani jushu ba khosu ko la ya nijing kari ha ku ni tu du se ti ko la ya ne twa tang de ta ne ya tang tu de che tin ngres.
But the point here is that you're trying to quantify, get numerical data on the population of people you're studying.
Tanda de kap singi gwa de ka re se ne chorong ga taksi chi sa ge ani mi ti tak gang lai thopi tangka chi gorwa tangka te ta ni daruchi de ta tangka tan de bi go ne ani chi ko thamagi chi ani dom do ja chi gorwa oti samlangi gu res de kapsa.
And so I'll combine these questions and ask you, what do you think the goals are of quantitative research and what are its strengths and weaknesses?
Ani tanda data shi sha ba ba ne che chu samla ta ba na nga chu bor se shimji se te ge ani karso go de karin sares korongge magi do karin sares ta de la ya ani ko ginsen ta ya chinsha kar dos.
Data di ani borje shimjuki ani chik news ina ta korong kita daki ani kono suene se ani chik Drongbu di nala shimji chi san ani pena ani kalasa semne ki neba yongi zimba ina ani kola tine 아니 대부디 가래 중기여 봐디 아니 가세 요약이 안디니 더 체크치도 아니 미유티 티치도 안디니 체 아니 올라다 아니 제가 코라 케벤디 가래선 다르다 코라다 뉴칸라트니 대보칸 중기여 봐다 페나 어디니다 페나니 마다메 kengi 아니 맞아 아니 세미나라 소바텐디 중기여 봐이나 코라니 가족금의 심적이 돈에 아니 정보렌서를 대체 코라다 게센데 고 유칸라트니 대보칸 중기여 봐지 아니 견차디 가르돌라나 디다 아니 제가 당어도 아니 당부 두릅 지대 선발라페나 아니 같은 심리기 네바저바 아니 제가 아니 교 네탄디니 리벨레스나 타야지 안 그런 게 당부 마셔야게 된디게 야디니 네탄디니 용되게로 딘선을 야지 아니 둠데딘 따따 마야게 딘디 현자데 용되게 서레스 딩도
맞아 the goals of quantitative research is get to know the cause and effect relation between the things. And for instance, if you have like someone has mental health problems and you ask questions about that and quantify the effect. So the causes of try to find the causes of the mental health, the problems. The strength of it is, for instance, if you have a mental health condition and if you try to measure the effect on the sleep or other things, and you can know the cause and effect relationship between what is causing that sort of mental health condition. You can know that. But sometimes the weakness is if you ask some kind of this kind of questions, and there are chances that the person will cannot tell the truth or lie, even if you are taking some kind of numerical data from it.
It's a great point. So, I just want to make one point. We'll talk more about this, but quantitative research can be both descriptive and experimental. So quantitative research by itself doesn't establish causality. We'll talk about different strategies of establishing causality.
Tanda di kapsu gelag desi jachila borso shinji de la tende taro borso shinji chipu ge ngaso di ngaso ge jindri gi dawaji gorwa ti saja kurutsuku yo mariswa ta di kapsen bana ngaso borso shinji de la yang kokari yoresena descriptive seguran dejo ge shibse chi goran dejo chi ya ge shibse chi ta ni shenda ngaso takship dia chi experimental the theories things tambalaya detal tede detang ngaso jindri dawa ti ga tenda yores and tanda di kapsu quantitative seguran borso shinji ga rangla tende detang yo tenda yang maris the quoting also kale ya jela something khagana to do session grace.
The only difference between qualitative and quantitative is in qualitative you're not collecting numerical data, and in quantitative you are collecting numerical data.
다 단다 딜라야 가수기 캐퍼 스고라 다 비체던 벌써 심지니가 바로게 캐퍼 제시 캐퍼 강지 여바디카레 시스템발야 저런 그 비체 심지 값이 바나 가수기 정가탄데비 네 당투트 드르치 정보탄데비 당투트 드르치기요 마레스 벌써 심지 값이 바나치 정보탄데비 당투트야 드르치기요 레스 또 그런 게 캐퍼 스우드테레스.
So with that, if somebody has maybe one more strengths and weaknesses of quantitative research.
Tadade kapse ani shenda chikam barsa shinji ke gipen ta chong kola chi sonrochi das
nye di karsa rang samcho ji shiwa na borche simju gi ta gigyen doji ta borche simju de dandang jo cheri gi de tablam law ra kalo ta du kapso chera la chi bobe de tensi jong go ta dil la simju chi tang doji rating gi do ani ta di gigyen doji karsa or pen danda 마랑조 내당 달로기 다 코비드 기디도 차사오는 백신 소라 다 코비드 백신 소야데 페지 borche simju latene ane dupsha gyojere thengidoro ane di ta dilatene ngacho kata gechen dawta ane mangbo jilla yang chisu ane covid gi vaccine zo chabe shu de la kangye matebe gechen ji yongoro ta kyon doje karyang gorsane ta simju de ane karsa thar chimba mayo partu ane ta lo halam lungis dawjing anjola ane vaccine de malebe ta malebne mi mangboji ge cheso shoyoro ta di peche ane burche simju gi gyun men na tengido ondinishi.
The strength of the quantitative research, what I think is quantitative research here. What I think is inductive reasoning, because we have learned about it, and it's inductive reasoning, and one of the strength is that because of, for instance, we have COVID-19, and because of the quantitative research done on the vaccines, and many people, even if many have suffered or died, many have survived because of the result through the quantitative research done on the for COVID-19 vaccines. One of the weaknesses is because we are doing the inductive reasoning. We don't clearly know, and since it took pretty long time to develop the vaccine, and we lost many lives due to COVID-19, and I think one of the weaknesses could be that one.
Great. We'll talk about induction maybe a little bit later. That's a great response. So now that we have kind of a flavor for the understanding of the differences and similarities, or the differences between quantitative and qualitative research, I just want to make one last point, and then we'll have Jenny give an example.
Tandadi kapse ngatsuge tandadi kapse ngatsu di haku yorwata jing verse shinji sa dan pizze shinji sa de korong chapter kari chidu yang ko tumbi cha kari chidu nangtong kana no chire sha sa de kola ani decision baris tandadi kola ngatsuge yang netan chenshi la tagi ins tigila ani gen Jenny lagi ani ditan rewe gi ngatsu pichon chi sha gres.
And the point is this: often research programs, or really addressing a research question, will involve both qualitative and quantitative research over time. In that, during the early stages of research, it's helpful to just gather information on the topic that you want to study using qualitative measures. And then once you have a better sense of that question, you might start to implement quantitative methods to really get numerical data on that particular question.
Ani kuwetege netang ti chi tangpo de la julen kala kansen chi yong ag chete ani pise shinji de dubai na yago yoges ani julen kala kansen chi yapu yong wi je la ya ani netang te la ya chi junga tin sa pu yong ag chete ani nga some verse shinji de duna ko kipen cha yoges.
And so qualitative and quantitative research really go hand in hand with each other and complement each other.
Tandadi netan de la tene de tanga chu pise shinji tang verse shinji sa de ani ko nyam tin duwa kan shila ya phajo chho la ya nga chu ka khung che ro chi ni de lo chi res.
So with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jenny Mascaro to give us an example of some qualitative and quantitative research. Thank you, Jenny.
Tandada de je la ya gen Jenny la nga chu de karsa versus shinji ta pise shinji ke ani pitsen chi na chi shayins.
Thank you, Robin. Are you all able to see my slides and hear me okay?
Yes.
Great.
The 통과돼. 제가 통과돼. Okay. Yes. Yeah, they see.
Good. Tasha Delek, it's nice to be here with you all and to share with you an example of a study that we did recently that used both quantitative and qualitative methods to try to address our research goals.
Some of the Untitled Chapter yang se dus jawa de gauchons dus tubatela. That and then by de kapse kusuge chiga shemji ke troa chigla ya len de che ane dan da pise ta borse shemji cha nyam te tang de dribe 아니 심지 그걸라야 도스모트지기스.
So we just saw and talked about the idea that there are strengths and weaknesses to both qualitative and quantitative methods.
단다 인바나 가서게 지 비세 신지 당 벌써 신지 인샬라 인바나 거기에 인샬라 수수기 전에 게 센당 좀 여바데 단가 수다 요레스.
With qualitative methods, you can get a richer and real-world understanding of the people and processes that you're studying.
Can you repeat that again? Sorry.
Sure. With qualitative methods, you can get a real-world and kind of rich understanding of the people and the processes that you're studying.
단다가 속에 비제 신지 지바에 마이나 저런 거 신지 지사 밑에 딱라 템비게 내 그속에 가서 그랬다. 그속에 그속에 좋았던 템비게 아니 니탕테와 real life system 보다 뉴어딩을 통해라야 펜트로요레스.
And with quantitative data and methods, it's easier to isolate causes and effects and to compare across groups and time.
당가 조금 벌써 신지라 때 바이바이는 벌써 신지라 때라테 됐던 저런 게 주가리레샤 쟁가리레샤 티로와 아니티 로가 지야당한테네 양고 딘세 만다 미기 딘세 만다라야 바로 그냥 신비비 판슬라 non 판슬라야 드래지로와 어티터지야 이레스.
And so this was a study that we did that used both quantitative and qualitative methods. And we used those mixed methods to address this major global problem.
단다 디캅심바나 코스게 단다 비슷한 벌써 신지긴 샤냠테 데데당데 드브데티 단다가 속에 단 잠로 지시강와야 섬기 강의식으로 왔다 섬기 강의 되게나네 디다 지시라 체비가 강의 되고라야 신지지yes.
So depression is the largest source of global medical disability, which highlights how important it is to have tools that can help us screen and measure depression.
단다디가 심바나 가서게 지금 잠랭기 간이다 medical disabilities system발아야 다 가서 가서 더 클로팅 때니다 지리카 젠다로 지 마트하게 지금 곡체트하게 니탄 때라야 가르세나 다티 가서 삼게세 depression 세 티기 콜라 임발라 특시 지오레스다 디게 다 단다딜라야 고수까지 그러세나 딱 screening instrument system 발라 데이터다 기타 삼겐 디오파 트레야기 아니 타블린 틴다 페치탕 데데 타블린 틴다 조알라 틴다 타블린 티기 아니 지 암질라야 밀라야 삼게 틴두 문두세테 니가서 그래 지 하고자라 뱅기오레스.
So screening tools help doctors to detect depression in patients, and they help researchers to explore and identify and understand differences in the prevalence and causes of depression around the world.
단다디가 kusugo screening instruments ade karana taksip jiagi ta tablet do re doga taksip jiagi tablet ta yuchi do doga tinda do chi kusugo yobaina taksip jiagi tablet degerwa takthap dege ani membala ya milaya chi samnge se te du mandu se te hapwa la ya ne phentro se bata ani deta karchi research tambala ya ani chi ta simjik chini kusola ya ani ji 젠다게 나라야 다 미기 나라로 다 미기 나라야 삼게세티 찹세 간다로 지레서 prevalence 때 간다로 지레서 때문에 아니 삼게티 종약에 준센디가레스 젠디가레스 티 아니 제라야 고 제약이 지 제야당때 여지당라 펜토치요레스.
And so this is one example of a screening instrument or tool in English that is used very frequently in doctors' offices and in research to try to detect and screen for depression.
다다 디가레스 담발아야고 다 인지나나 유주데 아니 지금 멘카나 침바나 암지게 멘카나 요레 되면다 셴다 양고 특시 진이 구수고야 밀라야 아니 지 삼게세디 가초치 두세디 특시제게 특탑게 지레스.
So this is called the Patient Health Questionnaire, and it asks people to read these 9 statements and rate on a scale from 0 to 3 how often they feel these different 9 things.
Tadi bana de la yesterday bana suge karsegre the nepagi troten tan de troasegre study bana de ganla aniko jua good what jua good de la tende de ani jua de re la lenja che lente la ya aniko tajra de le ko ni sungu parterwa or dus taja jiores.
And so if I were taking this, I would read the first question, little interest or pleasure in doing things. And I would think through, okay, over the last 2 weeks, how often have I been bothered by that? Either not at all, several days a week, more than half the days, or nearly every day.
Tapi saya bayar ke de kela mau itu dribi ngarang dus dribi kapsin bana tampu trot de tanggarwa trot de tabai bana gante la yang dewi ge ani dentrani gerang la sendua dentrani gerang la ya ani ngaci cal ci tondo tidak do dribia la ya ani ci karsa kureta toyang mindu imbana ci gatuti mindu saya stoka toyang tayana gatuti mindu saya tela ya ne tampu de na tidak do ani choni choma song selek ko do ani dentrachne nima khasile chong song saya de ci jago do ani nima chi ke cheka hatsla tin de chongson se de ni ja ku do ani chi kar su le ta nima tapar la ya nima chi ke cheka mar ta chi dentra ni ge na ne ta chi nin cheka dentra ni ge na ne ta cheka chen la chongson se ni do nearly every day system bala nima tapar do ta halan chongson se sim ja ku do.
And so after going through all 9 of these questions, you sum the score to come up with a total score.
That under the tola land general jailer or land general jailer, and that's the court machine some city or what it does some dumchi data and it's wrong and it's some say they can search those and it's top down the.
And so we know from a lot of research that when someone scores 10 or higher on this screener, this screening instrument, it is very likely that they are depressed.
That under the Tandagi Museg Tanda de Ganga draw your chuge Nasuge, Samuel Totechi or what they draw the total lenje pickups, de Galaya, Jachate, Chuton Chuli Mamba Yopaina, and a Midelaya, Samge Yubati Wata, Sange Yubati, and it does Tongo Yores.
But this measure is in English, and we need to make sure that we have similar measures in many, many different languages that are not just translated, but also effective, similarly effective at detecting and quantifying depression.
Da kusula takshinji chinchi bana tanda toa yuchute ane ko kegi mampo na jira kegi mampo na jira mesero ta kegi na jira tsama imba ane ko kegi jira tigi nala ya ko takshinji de dribi kaps yang ko ngachu samge se ti katso chi du se chi ta ti tangkala pa ba chi ro sange du mu du se tangkala pa ba la ya ko pheni dem ba tenda do zugu yores.
And so that's what we wanted to do with this study that had the following aims. The first aim was to translate this patient health questionnaire so that it could be used with Tibetan-speaking populations.
So that de la yang asuge mugi ji de la ya processing ji de kapsu tanda de shiji de mugi ji esta tanda de ka resena tada de la ya ani nepi trotan tanda ge twa chorwa data ani pe najir ani poke shenyi ge ta poi shenyi ge ani ji chupa trela yan de ko ani karsa semnge te dumdu se taxe ji che te pecho ton chupa ji ko yores.
The second aim was to use quantitative and qualitative methods to evaluate whether this Tibetan translation of this depression screening tool is effective with Tibetan-speaking populations.
That me nyate karin system balaya tada delaya jusha juchu orwata 때 단단가 속에 좋아되다 보이는 주바 되게 좋아되다 아니 그 되게 아니 법박이 나온줄아요. porque 신이게 나와요. porque 신이게 나와요. 다시 집에 가서 그 펜드 덴바린 도리문도세 때라야 내가 저기 빛에 당한 벌써 신지게 인샷 배치 당대다 아니 고라야 신지지아레스.
And we did this study we started it in 2019 with the Emory-Tibet Science Initiative and with many of the educators in ETSI.
다다데 가레라 바이나 코츠게 심지디 제바인 심지디 니스톤 주고로라야 Emory-Tibet Science 레럼탄 냠데가네 제바인스.
And so our final aim was sort of an exploration. We wanted to see, to use this Tibetan translation to estimate the prevalence of depressive symptoms among monks and nuns enrolled in ETSI.
단다데 그거 무기스마데 카렌스 담발에 Emory-Tibet Science 레렌나라 연주시치 근게 아니 따중나라야 아니 가스고리다 삼게 단데베기다 딱지로 딱센테 아니 잡세 간다도 지레도 때 터시지야데 인스.
And so these were the aims of the study, but remember, we need to have hypotheses that we're testing. So I wonder if you can think for a second about how you might translate these goals into a testable hypothesis. What might a hypothesis be?
무게데레스 심지대가 무게데레스 단다당 아술라 무게데가 갑승아술라 심지지라야 최샤지고요레스로 단다게 네 무게데 주 심차냠데 지 도도로 주조바인 바이나 아니 거기 최샤데 간다로 주 인사레스 아니 델라텐데 최샤지조로 나스.
So you can think for a second, and if anyone has a burning answer, you can grab the mic.
Tadekolaya, this year in Laya, Samatano chess, and the Delaya, actually, Gonsus on you by Bana, right? And a couple of lands on activities.
Jenny, we are going to explain hypothesis a little bit. You may just want to kind of translate that, maybe just as prediction.
Perfect. And yeah, thank you, Robin. So what I mean here is by hypothesis is a prediction that can be tested in this study. And I'll just jump ahead and tell you the way we came up with a prediction from these goals. And our prediction was that this Tibetan translation of the patient health questionnaire is an adequate tool for screening and evaluating depression.
단단하게 최소세 하이포테시스 최소세가 최소세는 집단계된 대로 와다 맞추고 집까지야지고 와다 첫번째야지고 첫번째에 갈라나 건게 데이터라텐데 데이터처럼 그 뜻이 진지 진이 준이 그 최소세고 와다는 로치리스 데이터라텐데 그 속에 데이터까지 센스 담발아야 아니 단단하게 네비기 트로튼던 데비기 좋아 구아스기도 와다디 베이나 주샤주데 아니 베이나 주샤주데 아니 법박나라야 아니 지 삼계세의 요메 뜻이제다 아니 삼계세의 야 천지라야 아니 가르스고리다 천지에게 락차마소나 아니 지 adequate system 발라 체탄된 바지레도 세티게 구속의 디인스 구속의 최샤데.
And so this is what our translation looked like. We created this by, we had one translator who was obviously proficient in English and Tibetan, who translated the PHQ-9 into Tibetan. So they did a first translation.
And
then a group of 5 translators translated this from Tibetan into English and back in Tibetan over and over until they believed that the Tibetan version accurately corresponded with the English version.
Carciores, Tambla, Puna, Judy, Ingina, Jurpa, Yansen, Ingina, Puna, Jurtus, Jurpas, Jurta, Hamadelaya, any letati Puna, Jushajuti, any Inchina, Yopati, Tanta Pechet. Tatari do say, Tiropartucus, Juriores.
And so we gave this Tibetan version of the patient health questionnaire to about 450 monks and nuns enrolled in ETSI. And this is what the quantitative data look like as a result of giving the questionnaire, the Tibetan questionnaire, to monks and nuns.
That draw data any Tandaga Tazun Chulaya no big lento but delatended the Chonvig Ningas Bursesim Jik Trantuch Goro dinner which race.
So what we're looking at here are the 9 different questions. So sleep problems, low energy, change in appetite, and so on. Chiga Nitandawa Yopata, and Nitandawa Chuche, and it's Pogatelic Nuado Mepa, and it's Kalasag, Tangado Mepando, to a good to a good race. And then remember, people are asked to say how often they've experienced each of these 9 symptoms over the last 2 weeks, from not at all to nearly every day.
That under the draw the Gutala, Gula, Devi, Duntrani Laya, and it's Choni Chomasons, and Halam, Nimatapado Johnson's Parag Masugalenja Guya, Tichuares.
And what we're looking at here is the percent of the monastics who rated each of these categories for each of the 9 different symptoms of depression.
That under the Casanga Guatica races Tambalaya Kuge, Tansen Relaya, and that Tatsunkusuge, Tansen Relaya, Tatsugulen, Jensha Jutelaya, Nidinsen Relaya, Nejasha Katsukatsuchi do Tetagores.
So, for example, if we look at sleep problems, 64.6% of the monastics said that they never experienced this over the last 2 weeks, whereas 4.2% said that they experienced sleep problems nearly every day.
And a Jacha to register tricky and Chonichomason can get a Chonichomason Sigures, Nimena, and the Nijacha Shisa Nige, Yamatopara, Halan Yamatopara, Chicken Johnson Sigdus.
And so to look at these quantitative data another way, here is the same data shown visually, and I'll walk us through it.
That under Dim by Nangasu Yanchiga Borsegation data David Town to Chigoram, Borseg Town to data, and so Yanko Yachipa Ganga Yuchipache, and Banako Santam Mandach gonna do Sendua, need under collectively Jagins.
So let's look at one item. Let's look at low energy, item 4, that's shown here in yellow.
That under this Sapuna chamber, they carry the low energy system, Balangas and Nuati Mepas, Pogantly Nutundo, which Sawarada Nishi Yambateres data, yes.
So when we look at the data that we just looked at, we can see that 36.5% of the monastics said that they did not experience low energy at all in the last 2 weeks, whereas 43.5% said that they experienced it several days.
So Nishu Chinchuresha said, take it to what the Shiva de la Taba in Bana, and the Chitazum on the Jachasun Sutritza Nage, and it did David and Tranigron like Chonichomaton said, Ledus. Ani Jacha Jason Tangage and Yamakashila Johnson said the Lavshas.
And so here is the same data shown visually, where 36.5% said that they didn't experience it at all the way to 3.1% who said that they experienced that nearly every day.
The Dandagan Asuga Tantucho, Tantu the Yanko Santa Manda removing la Papa in Bina, Jachasun Sotit Sangagi, Chonichomason Seshas, Nejachat Sasun Shesun Sangagi, and Nimakashila Johnson said Redos.
And then we can look at another item. This is item 9, which asks people whether they experienced feelings that they didn't want to be alive anymore or that they would want to harm themselves. And you can see that very few people reported that they experienced this at all. So almost over 97% said that they didn't experience this at all.
그런데 현대 가서 저 그바들 타바인바나 지 순이 죽음도 아니 지 수수가 소란이 좋아되는 레그도 사치 저들 타바인바나 라마소나다 만초기 촌이 좀 마송세티 라샤스 네 카시카시 지게 에코 되게 좋아들 해송세티 용시치마시 자체 고든 사치기 아니 촌이 좀 마송세 랜디 레샤스.
And so these are the quantitative data that we got from the study. But remember that our goal for the study, our main goal, was to try to see if this tool was effective. Was it a good tool for screening depression?
So 단단히 ngasu system balaya 저한테 달라텐데 좀 위가 ngasu 기티로다 borse 그 신직의 장토리도와 라텐데 좀 좋아진다레스 나다가 속에 딱시 심지티가 무이디카레 시스템 발란 딜런로 치샤조게 아니 지금 삼게 딱탑게 다른데 아니 지금 곧 야고 되면도 그 세단 담바치 렌도문도 사이데 그 속에 심지티게 아니 좋아드레스.
And so to better address that question and test that prediction that it's a good tool, we turned to qualitative methods.
단다게 좋아들어고 단다게 딱탑디 아니 그 세단 담바치레 도문도 사이데 좋아들 렌자이치도 아니 그 속에 단다 내가 좀 비체 신직되라야 담바인스.
And so what we really wanted to understand in order to test our prediction is we wanted to understand how people were understanding each of those 9 questions.
그 속에 되게 텔라야 가리 탑시가리 담바인바인스나로와 아니 지저 구치도 저 구데다 아니 미다 저 당사 고충지 시치니 고충이 간다스 고알랑도 사이테리스 담보데.
How do people decide how they might answer the questions and items? What do they think about? What are the cognitive processes that they use to decide how to answer each of the items?
저 그보데다 저 레레레레 렌데 피크캅스 아니 진지시 진이 고속에 저 딘다치 렌 디답기인세 때 타제비 값승아수 삼누기 땅땅땅 지여와 데이터 간다로지 나세티 저니버드레스.
Do the questions accurately capture what it means and feels like to be depressed, or is there anything missing here?
저 타만이 되갈라나 단다게 저한테 가서 그 삼게세 때 니지 총약이 저한테 다터로지가 레기되려면 때문에 네 현대지가 단다데 값을 저한테 나라야 지야고 카마청와도 차마청와도 되다 되면 되었어.
So we turn to a qualitative method called cognitive interviewing. Remember, Robin told us that there's not just one type of qualitative method. There are a lot of different ways to do qualitative approaches.
단다데 값을 고수가리 지바인 시스템 발랑 아수게 cognitive 스는 아수 삼을 서거라다데 값은 아수 저ting 인증기다 젠리세 디 타블렌트 표시다 바인 스탠다게 로빈하게 거는 소환하신 다당어서 비체 심지라야 심지 탈은 깡치요 받는 말이스 비체 심지가 나나요 고 심지가 탈은 만보 요레스.
So cognitive interviewing is a method that is used often in these kinds of studies to understand how survey items are understood and answered and to identify problems in the way an item is translated or interpreted by people.
단다데 값은 아주 인증기 젠리세 데이터 고 네 비슷한 신지가 다른 지금 바kan시라고 했던 게 바이나 지금 아주 트세데나 마보용 바네 트세데나 요바인바나 트세데다라야 아니 그 트세데나 요비트와 그 간다스고 렌샤 데달라 랭간다스 잠두세티 아니 하고체 때문에 아니 그 단다게 좋아데다 보이나 따지기 지금 이게 젠다나 주위 값인 반 그래 인바나 그 지고아 람비 값인 바나 데달라야 아니 지금 강에 가리가리 지체두세티 문제 제기체도 배치한 거였어.
And so here's how we did it. For each item, for each of those 9 items, So for example, the first item, little interest or pleasure in doing things.
Cái tổng bộ tiền bài nó số cái chữ chẳng biết tên là drag cái chế độ này chúa nhung à toàn nó chữ chính mà chúa tên là đồ riêng đồ sai chúa tiền tổng bộ tiền.
We had a different group of monastics read the translation of each item.
Tại yang có đến sinh hiện đại chỉ là ya anh để lại chút sao chịu bị chỉnh rồi rồi và để đủ số lúc chịu vào đấy.
And after they read each of the translated items, we asked them a series of questions.
Tại cái lúc nó cái chế là ya anh có số là ya anh chúa tên là khai tâm chúa thì khai tâm vậy.
We asked, what do you think this means in your own words?
Ta chúa tổng bộ thì cái tên là bài nan ta chọn cái chức năng mấy bài nan đi cái toàn đó khai chỉ là cái gì.
We asked them to talk through the thoughts and the process they would use to answer the question.
Ta tanda de kusu cái chúa tên là ya cái chọn chúa tên là lên job we khắp bài na lên job của khắp bài na lên job cái cấp số anh samlu năng là ya anh chữ cái đầu chữ số của du sẽ để chúa tăng bài.
We asked them to tell us about a situation in which they think someone might feel or experience each thing.
Ta tanda cái gang lai opi cái chúa rồi ta cái thì mich cũng xin à thì tên là đồ chong ba tên là đồ nhắm sinh hoa im bài na tên là đồ cái này tăng cả đó đồ chữ cấp số này ta chữ gang cái chong về cái nhung tên là đồ nhung cái sari sai cái và tên là đồ chúa chữ bài.
We asked them if they know anyone experiencing that symptom, not that we would want them to tell us, but just we wanted to know if they could think through and identify a time when they knew someone who is experiencing each symptom.
Ta chúa shivadi cái system bala cher ta chúa tăng sát là rồi cher cái mission đó là nhung tên là đồ chong về cái này tăng tên là đồ cái sự cái how could we way sẽ cái chế tự bài đi cấp xem bài na chỉ cái mission là cái chong sẽ thế mà đấy. Chỗ thì anh tăng cán đồ chỉ số cán đồ chỉ là ya mấy tên đồ là ya anh có gang cái chỗ thì tăng tên là cái này tăng tên đồ trong xã sẽ thì nguyên sinh chỉ thì yang chỗ thì tăng gọi.
And then we asked them how they think people would feel about saying that they experienced each symptom. Would they be embarrassed? Would they not want to talk about it? Or would they feel that it would be something that was okay to talk about?
Ta hiện tại thì ta tanda cái số tông nhau tên là đồ chỉ khai song sẽ tam bala tên là đồ shape cấp sẽ hiện như thế này bài na khu ta số cái đồ chỉ khai cái sai rồi tiêu qua cái chữ bài in special na ở tên là đồ sẽ na nguồn đồ sao đồ sẽ đồ ta điều mình đồ sẽ đồ ta na ở tên là đồ chỉ trong số ta tên là đồ sẽ na là chấm đồ sẽ cái số chữ rồi ở tên là cái đồ trong số sẽ tiêu qua chữ bài in.
And so we asked these 5 questions after they read all 9 translated items so that we could understand how people were understanding, interpreting, thinking about, and answering each of the 9 symptom questions.
That under the kusu draw gubuti lobby jelaya any draw the tongue abutan shava instant by na nakusu some understand do draw la guak understand do tell length understand do tig and netantirwa hakuacheta draw the ngauti tayores.
And then we asked 2 final very general questions. We asked, what do you think is missing from this questionnaire that would be helpful or important to evaluate depression?
Ta jelaya ninga so chitanga draw the tamadlaya and chitanga draw the do chitans tandanga so ge and chi samge ti tag chet pechutang ge tsochi ro telaya and chi matso karichi dos ro and jemalaya ro niti matso te khanan che pai bana samge ti chenje la ya pantron sa de se ya gitina chora che chelo chwa ge netan kana do chi do se twa de travayens.
And then we asked whether they could think of any idioms or sayings or phrases or expressions that they know of that people use to refer to depression.
Ta shenda chi kala stambala ya chi ta mi shenda gerwa ne chonga ha kwa ta ya na mi shenda ge ta nga su samge ti chya ge cheto ani peche ta ge ta chi su to te ta ani nga su kap chi do ta ani chi first line chi nyam de diwa do ta ya nga su ge chi tampi do ta te do yo ro dida do chi shinge wes ke ins.
And so I'll share with you just a little bit about what we learned from the qualitative interviews to show the difference in the type of information that we get.
Tanda de kapse gilage tanda kusuge pizza shinji pechitang de kusula chimri kada do jira song se ti kolaya ani chi didi chi dus nesijagins.
So we interviewed 6 of the monastics who were in residence at Emory. And one of the things that came out of the interviews was for this symptom, trouble concentrating on things such as reading the newspaper or watching television, there seemed to be some differences in the way that people were interpreting that symptom.
Tanda de kusuge chi drudge triba in drudge tanda ne Emory la yelso Lobjaning and Kushokutsu, Tatsungo trees like Dutch to Instantanda de any Drode Dumbadirwa, any Kasugri, also Chopperlore, any Yenchintare, Tredo with Tondo de Dribby Caps, any Lu Drimiala Yakangi do Sashura, or Digi Drode Tanstambala, Kosu Nankula, Drode Gual Lantang Telaya, and equal a Mandro de Dose.
And so when this symptom is asked about in English, the general meaning is people feeling that they have difficulty with concentration. It's a difficulty paying attention and maintaining focus due to depression that is commonly experienced by people with depression.
Chitanga chua de tang because in by Narwa, Tandanga so Samni Yopig Michilan by Nash Chitanga that you load Mila, Lucy Jim Chiala Yakangi Yopigitua, Tenado Chires.
However, when we interviewed the monastics, very few of them talked about it this way, and instead people tended to focus on interest level.
That under the Kasukusuge, Kushuga, Tasunkusula Kichitribu Delaya, and it's Nasu Toya Yomegi, never till I attract you at Sogdus.
And so one of the monks said that to answer this question, they would think about things that they're interested in, like reading, and that they're interested in watching, and that they would think about what their interests lie on.
That under the Kapsimbana, Kushiku Garrison says Tambalaya, John de Tambacapses, Chitanga Susu to you, Paro, Chini to you, Chikutu, Paticola, Nakarikarichi Chela go, you Karakarichi Chela go, message or what Ticola to you know, so dus.
A second reported that their classmates and they, when they were young, they were made to read books that they would be completely bored and couldn't focus. And sometimes when they're made to watch documentary shows, they have trouble concentrating. So again, talking about things that they're interested in versus bored with.
That you check Google, hope the Chinchin caps at the Logic Paris, that the Logic by Bana, and Taco Carmompo Logis Tambalaya, and she knew and it to not a matter to make shake do swa, that in the location Stambala, Chitung de Caps in Banachi, draw the Latin not so de Tuna, you my tongue, and to young you made and it you knew Manugi, Nitantil and the Shijago by the Shijagdus.
So 5 of the 6 monks answered like this, whereas 1 of the 6 said something about difficulty concentrating because of someone's mood.
Do not dramatic, the Lucic the dramatic, any Chichina Migi, some compound or your race at in the sons.
And so they said that this could happen because one is not well, or that one is feeling unhappy, or that something else is occupying the person's mind, such as work or tasks that they have to finish.
Chichina to not dramatic, Jinsenti Kalana, as a good you may patan, and some Bachipuma Sota, Yana, some Luna agenda to course Barwa. Tinado is Chichina Yanko Tondo Chigueta, Likachi Tinado, some agenda you find by now, no could not dramatic Tinado languages.
And so this tells us that there may be something important about the translation of this item that's not conveying the symptom in the way that it's intended to convey.
And some local courses Stambala, deep Puina Tepa, Jury Capsin Bana, and a Puina Jirba Tege, and Inchin on a Cheptanga Dindando, Troatawala, and Karich Hakuni Truach Goroa, T. Mapa Tatala and Pankore Jurmatka Gusoti lessons.
A second thing that we learned was around the different ways and reasons that people may have trouble or feel it would be difficult to answer some of the items. And so this monastic reported, I think it will be, people may struggle depending on their outlook. For instance, the monastics are encouraged to speak truth and be honest. So even if you are feeling hopeless and down, you might be tempted to answer it in the opposite, but you know that ethically that will be wrong. So there will be a tension. On the other hand, you know, people might feel a little embarrassed or uncomfortable revealing that they're feeling down or hopeless.
Yeah, Kisha becomes a daily talk short in the Kisha dinner do number is Chitan by the Zancho tennis some time by not the oris. This Tambala de la Young switch, the tensions is Tambalaya, Gerardo, Tamadu Jungoris. The Shenda gonna ship by Bana, so Jenda Chinita by Bana, some Samalaya Casore, Susu, Nitanta, Chigua Mepata, Chigu Mepata, Tenado, Chimila, Shenda, Shelaya. And
the last major thing that we learned about was whether there might be something missing from this questionnaire that would be important to ask people in order to get a full understanding of depression.
The Carichetu system, Belanga to Semisa, the Hakweg Chetu, Dinatele, Carichi, Someba, Taguachgora, or the English.
The most common thing that people reported was the important relationship between stress and depression.
That Dicasimbana Kutsugi, Ketchishitira, stress and depression, stress and pitches and septira, depression, Tamlas and Etin, Paruk and Joatic.
So one of the monks said, depression and other mental problems, mental health and stress often tend to have many similar symptoms. And so this person reported that it was hard for them to distinguish between stress and depression using the 9 symptoms of this questionnaire.
Depression samge sa data and some gangi shenda pisha by another sense of stress did that dolaya chi kurang paroge jote and shepherd jail like kalikapuji dus pishana tinado capsing bana data laya and coge tandomas and tasan down do yetsa and kurang parolaya and chi sansen judge or sansen jeti and a kapuchi dus is tambalaya. And that drug go the town Stambalaya and it taken on the road. Chaprin Jati and Capuchongus.
Another said that they think that depression could be initiated or started by feeling too much pressure. And so it could be started by one's customs or their culture or habits. So they thought that questions about sources of pressure or experiences of pressure from habits or culture or custom might be helpful to ask about.
region tan tane rolun ruta tan ne susu komshila sopala tani chungu chires tinstambala ya ne tamputela ya draw te na la ya ane tinda do chungwi gi jinsen sugura ta juti tampuchi shaba imbana ya ko chichina pantyo sugdus.
And so this was a study where we used both quantitative and qualitative data to address our goals, which leaves these same questions asked in a slightly different way. What does the quantitative data that we collected tell us that the qualitative data doesn't? And the opposite, what does the qualitative data reveal that the quantitative data can't reveal? And so I'd love to hear thoughts on those questions or any other thoughts that may have occurred to you throughout the talk, things we missed or should think about further.
Can I jump in and say something? When I read that seventh question, I see like the examples are not that you may need to change the example into something relevant to the Tibetan society, because watching television and news reading are leisure, right? Some people consider that as leisure, just relax, and then I think that example is not so to the point that is like connecting to depression or other focus.
That's a really interesting point. And maybe that's why people didn't answer it the way we would have expected. Maybe it threw them to a different sort of place.
Yeah. I thought that way, because newspaper and television, they don't usually do newspaper and television. They just don't bother if that is in the question or not. But if you put something else, reading or like meditation or reciting or debating, maybe they have other answers, other types of answers.
I wonder if others would agree with that.
비천등이 되나 좋아다 digdo 비천대 더 매주로 설성스 가르치라 바이나 지금 양고 비천대양 법법이 지출 합벌다 지금 건데 칼라야 저요 지지 제샤바이 바이나 비차시나 검자도 또 둘런치도 또야 지금 가서 그래 낚셔다도 또 들어도 지 샤바이 바이나 저요 주로와 인스탄발라야 지치나 양고 렌즈가라 차번도 두스그리스 당가서 적인 바이나 지 접벌로가 또 지금 논년나 다 지고라다 년춘나 다 지고라 등가서 지금 fellow 지금 값이 지 다야 들어도 지고라 인스탄발라야 야 지금 거기 비천들라 지라당 바이나 지치나 렌즈가라 차번 존스그리스 두스시바 아니 ade tela ya chezu kali gongu dos gele tratinas.
I have one question to the survey that you have conducted in relation with the subject. Did you actually try to see the differences of the age in the subject? I thought, when you specifically asking question such as the, sleeping quality. I think age variation makes a little bit, differences. And beside that, I also agree what, Dawa just, pointed the points.
근데 gelay de sha chini che chu ge takshe shimju de chi ka sumi shi je dang chu se chi ro chi yosung do dang po de la ti chi ka se ani chi nga chu ga ni ge ni la ka chu ra so ni ya wo chong so ma so se ke che de stam bala ya tro tang sa ku su lu chu lai time base chi tang ba ne yang ko ge lo ge chi chong la ten de ya ni la ya che pren do ya ten do ya jo sigres.
I think that is such an interesting prediction to test, that people's age may influence how they answer that item.
Tanda de gelay ba na tanda nga su ge tro de ya go dus ke nga su ya ji shimji chi go ne chi shas ani ko mi gi le chue la ten de ti ani tro de la len ja la keper kan do chi do se de.
And it sounds like it's something that you all may explore as a group going forward. But for this study, we really wanted to first start with the basic question of whether we were accurately translating and asking about sleep so that that kind of research could be done in the future.
Nyam de chi de chi ye tang to ba den do chi res ande chalai ba na chitang ku su de ga mu ye de ka res na de te pe na te ta ta chi jin do man do ra na tin da do chi ta ba na na de shi la sha de ti ro ta de shi la sha de ni maung ba la ya ani chi ta ni ta dan da ta nga su sem me la so pa gang la ya shin ji ta chi ja chim bu de chi ro de ge ta shin zin san da chi la ya mu ba tin da yins.
Hello, Jenny. So my question is that regarding to these 9 questions, so these 9 questions is similar, these symptoms is similar to the stress. So how we can distinguish between whether these, many of mental disease are the symptoms, they are similar kind of these 9 questions. How can we distinguish between them? And also in the Tibetan community, we don't consider depression and stress, these are kind of disease. So I'm wondering whether this, doing this research in the monastery and we say that, oh, you have this, you excluded this person into the society, that might affect they're more kind of worry and fear. So they have a 2 kind of, if you understand they have a depressed, this is beneficial to you can cure and give drugs like that one. In other sense, if you make this group as a, you have this kind of mental disease and excluded from the society, also that affect their own mental happiness and also that affect the their own well-being and things. So I'm wondering whether that is how much it is to do the balanced, to introduce research in the Tibetan community about the depressions.
Tanda gila so de tampo te samwe tang samche sa te ge ji ko ga tang chen la ya ji and drawi cha mang po tu ti stam ba yo ga ka bu du sin jo te lai bai na de do de shi chang stam ba la ya po po chi to la ba de gon de chi chong la ya na su ge samwe tang samche sa te ani ne chi la ya ta yo ma de tin stam ba la ya ani de do chi du se stam ba la shen da ne yo chi ya ta chi ro wa ta ja de ne lok se ga ta ya chi ti ge ne ta te ya de to la ten de ta ta chi de to se chi ya ten al tang ga seng do ngala samchen do se ta ne pan ro chi la chi ge Chiorwa tela tene de tayang asu samba nonshil haya ne ton tene do josugo re tin stambala ya draw de ton we kapse yang chik tu nyam ba ton chanyam bu chuna ya godus.
I think you are asking 2 very, very important questions. The first is about, I think, how accurate is this method for characterizing cause and effect in our emotions and our mood? How accurate are these approaches at identifying and distinguishing something like depression and stress from one another? Or maybe it's not accurate and they are more similar than we are giving credence.
Ta tampo de bai na gela so de pe ta twa ni sha pe ke cham bri se tampo de bai na ta de di kap se twa de ka re se na ta tanda ge twa de ta la tene de ti ro nga su ge chi 다 삼계스나 누구를 삼세세 값이 많아 고소 지금 민증 가다도 지지기도 대셰티 니체단단 체단단 바 야부지 자기 도에 민도사야기 되게 네탄티지 하고 가지고와 비셔서는 가속에 삼단 저 유주기다 지금 강에서는 또 데이터라에 만부지오라 데이터가 대셰티 따다 덴도문도다 비셔서만 생했던 삼세기 대셰티 따다 덴도문도사야지고와 어떻게 생겨야 된다 연구도스.
And that's important and difficult because, as you note, there is, and as we found reported in this study, there is a lot of overlap between depression and stress.
다들 지금 딱딱이나 가버렸다. 내가 속에 저는 지금의 증거들은 가서 tak시나 따바이 마이나 생애동 삼세세 주로 삼계동 삼세세티 depression to stress 바로라야 네군 드라비차 속으로다 냠때 지금라 지켜야기다 당생 테니로와 냠때 요약에 당생 지바 요야 되나로 요레스.
I think the second question that you asked is even more important and has to do with the ethics of doing this kind of research and how and why it's done.
현재 드론이 받을 딜리전게 첨부를 스타티컬 시스템 발에 가서 다시 심지되는 로시온 비값 아니 디기다 가서게 상초스고라다 주상 상초단 저요 받치레스타 다시 되는 로시 아니 가리치니 듣고 요래 간다스 듣고 요래서 저거 디긴 잘록다 지금 상초단 저 주트라시는 두스.
And certainly if a screening instrument like this is used in a way that creates harm for people, that is very problematic. And we need to be able to detect if research or if using the tool is causing harm.
단단하게 디라도게 지금 트스트 디라도 스고라다 타블린 디라도 페치탄 데이터 탁시 디라도 지와라 텐데 데이터 탁시 지사텔라야고 당아주게 콜라야 네도 지체가 여바 임바이나 아니 딜라야 탁시 지고 지레스 지푸게 지기 두무도 세티 고 하쿠고 엔케 침부샤거리스.
In many cultures and circumstances, tools like these are used to try to get resources and all kinds of resources to people. Treatment, but also, behavioral resources and social resources to help people.
단단히 가수님은 어떤 게 단다 특색이 다른 데는 오시도와 되게 지금 그거다 담하게 디카리를 배쳤던 거래서 담발아야 다시 초대 된다게 나라야 아니 그게 주셔서는 말했다가 통공스는 말했다가 디스거와 지금 로그램 지금 쓰고라다 로그램 쓰고라다 로세야겠다 어디라도 지금 라가라 kenchigores pichashana nga su troten thela yang ko kare kare chi gugun du search korwa tenasingi ani samgi da troten thela yang ko rupa chia kare kare chi gudu te raya la ya ni chetu ni du special tangores.
But I think I hear your concern or the point that you're raising is that it's important to make sure that this kind of research is done in a way that doesn't cause more harm and that causes or brings relief of suffering to people. And I do think that is very, very important. And I'd love to hear more, or maybe that will be what you explore more going forward.
단다 디나네 연 하버드 치카레스 담발아야 아니 단다게 탁스 디나로 라틴데테 아니 지 가술아야 가르스고레다 쮸엔틴데 슈첨부 마트라스 고라도 밀레 둥게 슈첨부 마트라 이만 따텔레 셴다 쿠술아야 강에 카리오 파티 셀아야 지 탑시카리 땅고도 세치고라 데간라야 무 신증고야데 케침버리스 틴스tambalaya 니치치나 단다게 좋아 데이터 라틴데테 내가 수 지금 던져 가는 콤바 던도 간에 스포고 두세 데간라야 지치나야 데간라야 펜트리 시리즈.
So Jenny, I think we go to about 9:30. Yeah, so this is might be a good place for a break. I would. Does that sound good, Jenny?
That sounds great. Thanks, Robin.
I would just like to Thank you so much, Jenny. I think that was a wonderful example of not only the pros and cons of qualitative and quantitative research, but how the two can work collaboratively in the same study. So I just think that was a perfect example of that. So thank you so much. So now, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
No, just thank you so much. Really wonderful being here with y'all.
Oh, it's great being with you. So we'll take a break for 30 minutes. It's 10:30 Atlanta time.